We have, I think, a pretty easy task tonight, which is that I'd like to know a lot more about what you want your characters to do in a proactive way, because there's a lot, and I have
Very
them
cool.
that I can imagine, and I have lots to do with non-player characters in the same fashion. So, so I'm going to turn it over to you for the moment and let you know that I'm just going to pick up whatever it is you tell me that you're doing, and we'll take it from there.
Frank, I usually start, so why don't you?
Okay. Okay, so we have a couple of things, right? We got mainly this whole what's going on with the business. So we kind of, now we're having some, we're pushing up against, we're the things that are happening with the growing company. Proactively, I kind of look at this right now where it's like this company and the energy and everything was Vince's main focus for a very long time. And now that he's back into, the hero game, he's getting drawn more into what he loved about it back then, because he kind of stopped, not out of choice, right? I mean, his powers stopped working. And at first, he was really like, oh, geez, this again. But the last couple of adventures and, kind of saving the day has kind of sparked something back in him. And so, he's kind of leaving a lot of the details in the capable hands of, of the people that he's been working with for a long time. And so on that nature, he's trying to be hands-off. On the other side, he wants to, dig through the Power Star stuff and see if there's some notes and the science of that. I mean, he's just, because that's really scratching two itches for him. It's scratching the hero side and it's scratching the science side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I get that. So, let's take a look at the Humboldt side of that for the moment before I hop over to Alan. One thing I just, when you were saying that, I got this weird image in my head of Vince being at Advanced Futures and working on something, or basically just being at his usual job place, but now he casually grows sometimes, like when he wants to do things. Right. And so like he's basically flinging around his superpowers kind of without worrying about it, without thinking about it, and because this is who he is, sort of.
Except now he's learned to go outside when he goes back down.
That's right. Yes. And so that's just an image that came to me. I will. I will put you in a situation, again, just to make the scene out of this, where you are talking to you have two things that are demanding your attention at Advanced Futures. One is the damage that was done by the Continuum, or the Continuum's agents of the moment, no pun intended, that the damage that was done in our first session, which, as you recall, they didn't manage to completely destroy that particle accelerator, but they did something pretty dreadful to it. They did cut through the tube, buckle some pieces and stuff like that. So although it is not destroyed, it is definitely impaired. It's not functional, and it can be repaired rather than merely replaced. but it's going to set you back. This was actually a damaging thing to the business plan that was in place before all this happened. Which makes, I think, some sense. They did get some good hits in on the thing, and so Denise, in particular, being the technical whiz, one of the technical people, is particularly unhappy about this, and is trying to cobble together what she can do to figure out how to get this thing replaced. The fact is, you guys just, on paper, you guys just don't have the bucks to just turn around and replace it and keep everything in place the way it was. That's Gavin's, department, and so he and Denise are like going back and forth. The time lost without this thing, the money lost if we replace it, but can we do it? Well, we could, but, well, then do it. But wait, Denise, you don't seem to understand the price. That what'll happen if, to this other project or these other things that'll have to go. We've got to make all the insurance payments. Insurance payments are not a joke. Denise forgets about the insurance all the time because insurance is not science and it doesn't do a thing. And she's still a little uncertain on the whole theory of, American insurance. So she's not alone. So she's, struggling with that. And so she and Gavin are arguing, and so you got to cope with that. And at the same time, there's this meeting that Janelle insists that you really need to come to. She's been waiting. She's been set up this meeting with some people, and she really, really, really wants you to come to this meeting.
Okay.
So you're...
and I know that there's also these. The interest in advanced futures is kind of high with investors and things like that as well.
Three whole angles of attack on that.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, we got to solve this money problem somehow.
Much as you love your business and all, it sure is a lot more stressful than, for example, going off and fighting the basilisk on top of a...
Yeah.
So
I imagine scenes where you're in the office with stress lines coming
that's right.
out of your head.
Yeah. Someone sticks their head in and says, "Vince, you promised," and you're like, did Power Star call by any chance? Maybe I got a call from Power Star. Maybe I have to go do something with him.
Mm-hmm.
What about Mike then? Who has actually a bit of a breather.
I have a couple of thoughts going on. One is, of course, I am interested in having Advance look at the Power Cave stuff in order to get a better handle on what we've got in resources.
Mm-hmm.
There's the whole what is the continuum question. There is... and of course, the Dark Cohort, doing research about them. But on a more personal level, Mike is having problems because he would really like to have a confidant about his stress with a secret ID and dealing with this. And I think Advance is okay, but it's not the closest person we'd like to talk to. The other element here is that I was really struck in our forum exchange on at a play about the death of Basilisk, and I just realized, this is our theme is hopeful and upbeat, and yet we actually had a character die, and this is seems
powers are hopeful and upbeat.
Yeah,
villains get, in my opinion, the privilege of challenging the parameters that the heroes rely on.
Interesting.
And I wanted to, in this case, I mean, that doesn't mean I want them all to be precise opposites so that the parameters don't really exist. But I wanted to stress a couple of points, which was that you guys do face genuine danger. Both of you are dealing with powers that are, that man was not meant to know, and that they can go. There is an edge to slip off of. Vince, there's side effects on Vince's powers. Or rather, interesting limitations of different kinds on Vince's powers. When he cuts, there's the side effects when he cuts back from his growth. There's the mysterious side effects that Denise experiences that we haven't brought into play. And in your case, the potential for special effects to just do who knows what, whenever, is really high. So I like the idea that they're hopeful, but hope always carries danger. Hope always carries a risk. Hope always carries a place to be. And I guess I was seeing the Basilisk as very much, when all the very same principles go awry, whatever else may be said about them, and certainly quite a lot, but one can look at the young contingent of the alt-right and like the college crowd, and they are not the same as the people twice their age who've been struggling under economic hassles and stuff. They must be operating on some kind of hope themselves. What is that?
Yeah, well, now that you bring it up, that interests me. My thought was that Mike has two personal interests here. One is just finding, as I said, somebody to have as a confidant. The other one, though, is I think he wants to look into who this avatar of the Basilisk was and motivated her. So,
Well, as I said in the forum and mentioned in the last session, her name was Shelley Van Hoyt, Houtte, and was a Bay Area college student who actually did not know Jake Drake personally, but knew him by sight on campus.
Jake Drake is Komodo?
Right, Komodo dragon, yeah. And what interests me is that, Jake has a public identity as Komodo dragon, and is very much out gay and very much a metrosexual kind of, Bay Area dude who's kind of selling that lifestyle. I mean, he's selling it in terms of branding himself with it and making it something that's fun to watch. And so I can kind of see that it's just kind of begging for a deliberate challenge, kind of begging for a deliberate contrast to brand yourself exactly the opposite. And that the temptation or the availability to do this, the fact that, as Rod defined it, the two of them actually had a bit of an unhealthy mutual profiteering thing going on that, Jake at least didn't intend, but he wasn't exactly like refusing to do it either once it got rolling. And so between that and the fact that people, at 20 are adopting identities and receiving real social feedback for it, not just peer group social feedback, but actual community, society social feedback for it, and I'm basing this on people I knew a while ago when I was a graduate student, so college students I knew, who really branded themselves the free thinkers by adopting fairly reactionary positions. And Vince, to be clear, I'm not talking about what I would think of as conservative positions so much as reactionary ones. And that they but they would brand themselves as the free thinkers of the day in doing so, and that a lot of the people who did that were good looking and charismatic and good speakers, and I was just thinking of that kind of person when I was thinking of Shelley. So it's not as though she didn't walk into it herself. She went that way her own self, but I know the roads that she walked down to do it. And so and I would like to say maybe the case is that yes, I mean she, has been identified, and there is perhaps a little bit of a disturbing, festive dissection and caricature of her as a person going on across the blogosphere, the mainstream news, and a certain amount of martyring of her word. She was very effective martyr. The Basilisk's regional presence attack was very effective. Mm-hmm. And so you've got very much a martyr to the movement, but of course, all of which completely ignores her as a person, except as, a sacrifice. With plenty of claims that you guys killed her, incidentally, at that level. And then, on the other hand, you have people who come as close as you might to saying, well, she deserved it. This is, look, she was obviously a crazy Nazi girl, so, good. So I would say that, it's perhaps a little bit disturbing when you're looking at the range of commentary when Mike is doing a little investigation into this. And maybe it's a little disturbing to see that the events may have saved the power plant and a considerable portion of that geography, but the social ramifications of that whole encounter. I mean, the reason I'm saying all this is I'm thinking more in terms of Komodo Dragon. This is exactly the kind of issue I would dump in his lap, in Rod's lap, and say, all right, your powers are bright and fast and hopeful. And you're a idealistic, young guy. Your character's an idealistic young guy, maybe a little brash, maybe, but putting himself out there, literally, right? Literally putting himself out there. So, what are you going to do now? So, in other words, you don't fight the basilisk just by punching the basilisk. Mm-hmm. That's sort of what I was after. So, if he defined his character as having a very public platform, a very public voice, a very branded identity, then let's see what he does at that. Can he be heroic doing that? That's sort of where I was going with all this, in terms of why I would play this a certain way or create backstory of this kind. Does that help?
Just a quick addition. A big question, too, that would need to be asked is, once she accepted this contract with the basilisk, how much of that basilisk influence itself corrupted her?
That's a very, very good question. I mean, how much of what you saw was her? Some of it was. In fact, you can look at her material. It's kind of maybe possible to see when she did it in retrospect. So looking at it beforehand, I'm not saying she visibly goes crazy like a big, huge head flip switch, but more that you can get a pretty good idea where she was before she became the basilisk. And examination of the remains shows that there is a device or it's part of the outfit. I think of it as a harness that you make and you put on, and that is what permits this to happen. So anyway, so clearly that was something that she was doing before. She already kind of made the contract first. After that, well, you're going to have to learn some more. You know, what was it? So, Alan, does that help a little bit with the kind of thing you were interested in checking out?
Yes, yes. So I wouldn't be usurping Rod's story if I went and actually investigated this woman a bit more.
Nope. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So my thought is, at least for Mike to start by, she's a student, so just looking up the places that she would have gone and walking the campus looking for, posters for political organizations, that kind of thing.
Well, you probably wouldn't be alone to be a little shocked at the, be a little shocked at the what's the word I want? I know there's a word.
Radicalization?
Well, no. I was thinking that radicalization in terms of students who disagree with each other strongly, being vocal about it, putting up their posters and being vocal about it, holding their events, and even to go beyond what the administration would like. What the administration is like is that each one sits down at a little table on the quad and speaks gently and quietly to whoever walks up, and nothing else happens ever. That's what the administration would like, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I, as a former college prof, I quite liked the idea that each student group was occasionally a little over the line. That the posters would sometimes go up in the places where posters were not supposed to be put. They're all supposed to be over there. And that, an event could turn into an impromptu party when somebody sets up the boombox in the walkway outside of the meeting hall area, and everybody goes out there and dances, and it spills out into there and stuff like that. I'm not sure I would totally endorse this, but the occasional fairly air-clearing shouting match that could occur. Usually with the other members of the groups, talking their own members down. I've been there at all those things, and I don't see them as bad. What you're seeing on campus is San Francisco State, I think, is completely different. You're seeing what can only be described as very mean-spirited point scoring, and that when people are vocally supporting a position, they tend to do so in a way that kind of targets individuals in a shaming or scary way. That women walking alone at night on campus, the usual security systems for that aren't adequate. There appear to be groups that actually operate as flash mobs to scare them. There are actually people who will, camp at the entrance of somebody's residence and basically, be there and stare and film just because the person's walking in and out of where they live, at a dorm or at a student house or something like that. And so these things all have kind of this edgy, unpleasant, non-discourse feel to them. And you've never seen that. That's the kind of thing that seems to go on these days to some extent, and it's not part of campus as I remember it. There were a lot of bad things on campus, but this kind of thing seems, you're like, wow, they're like doing this shit almost right out in the open.
So it's intimidation. Yeah, that's disturbing.
Oh, and there's also, I don't know how long you're going to hang out on campus, but one other thing that you may learn about is that there seems to be just a few too many grown-up looking people hanging around with the different student groups, who sort of vanish quickly whenever any university administrator or professor comes up and asks who they are. And they seem to be more present than, I mean, student groups are always targeted by the larger national or outside organized groups, and sometimes it's official. You know, like the Democratic Party, the students for the Democratic Party obviously have an official relationship with the actual Democratic National Committee, and that's usually on paper and is somewhat organized. But face it, it is an outside organization trying to run the students and their organization. And so that happens. Here, there seems to be a little more effort. And those representatives aren't supposed to hang out on campus and sort of operate as if they worked there. Speaking as a prof who dealt with this issue quite a bit, actually. So,
wow. It's been a long time since I've been on a university campus. So, my personal experience. So Mike would like to find what group Shelley Van Hoyt was associated with. Was she associated with a particular one?
The Students for Intellectual Freedom.
Students for Intellectual Freedom. And do they have just open meetings, or how does this? What can I find out by checking the internet and looking at billboards?
Yeah, I mean, student groups tend to have their own private meetings, but then they will also have open events where, usually when a whole bunch of student organizations are opened up, or an area is opened up for all the student organizations to come and have tables and stuff like that. And also student groups can register a table in the open spaces, whenever they want, to sit at the table and pass stuff out and make their case and stuff like that. They'll often do this in the course of a petition. During student elections, you can also pose a referendum and hold a vote. So then the referendum results get, recorded along with the regular election. That's often done. So there's plenty of room for more public contact with members of the group.
Yeah. So if there's something happening soon, I would just like to go and attend and maybe chat to somebody about, did you hear about what happened to Shelley, and see what the buzz is, that kind of thing.
Well, let me stop there while we imagine you on the campus.
No, I will throw in. I don't see Mike as having ever been to college, so
right.
So he's not that familiar with the culture,
right?
Yeah, this isn't a case where I can use my restaurateur skills.
That's a good point. Yeah, for once, you're a little bit out of your element. Yeah. The sort of hard-nosed, do I or don't I make the cut today doesn't really apply here.
Yeah.
So, okay. So good. With that in mind, let's go over to Vince again. And do you want to see, which one of these minor crises do you want to deal with first?
Let's deal with the lab first, because I have some. I mean, it's just
right.
Like,
okay.
So we know like what the financial obligation's going to be before we go into the other meeting. Is basically Vince's thought. Are the pieces that need to be fixed? Is this stuff that needs to be made? Do we have to order them? It's like, how specialized is this equipment?
Well, the equipment is extremely specialized. So, therefore, no matter what, you're going to have to buy some new pieces to repair,
customize everything.
Right, and to repair stuff that you don't order is itself a fairly finicky technical job. And nobody ever expected this equipment to undergo this kind of abuse. It's not like it's made to be repaired. So therefore, most of it, unfortunately, is replacement. And Denise is currently kind of trying to figure out a way to adapt what equipment that you have into that purpose to minimize the need for replacement. And that's what she's trying to figure out right now.
The other question is this affecting, like, I don't know if we would really have like deadlines on things.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, though. Yeah, you do have plans. Contracts. You do. I think what you have are more like plans to get X done, and this money is allocated to get X done. And you would say, well, you can always push it forward, but sometimes X is kind of important so that Y can get started. And sometimes it's important because you do, fulfill contracts as well, even if that's not your main thing. And some of those can't be ignored. So some of it's more time sensitive than you might think. Sometimes you've got like some sort of endowment or grant style funding for specific projects, and those do have deadlines. You're supposed to show your pilot results by such and such a date, which is usually pretty generous until somebody goes and like does time space damage to your fancy shit. So
yes, but the majority of this we're looking at is like opportunity cost.
Right. That's correct. Okay. And so there's a certain amount of trying to figure that out. Debates on this, different people. Specifically you, Gavin, and Denise may have slightly different priorities of what could be shelved and what couldn't be. Just like any three, fairly involved people at the management level of anything are going to have slightly different views of what can be shelved and know what's absolutely crucial. But that money is supposed to go here, and that's a big deal. It can't be shifted over, says one person, when another person says, but that money's just sitting there.
Well, and not only that, we also have like security issues too, which we've never had in the past. So we're going to need some help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea that there actually could be an external infusion of funds right now is perhaps more enticing than it would have been when before you would be worried about the lack of control that might bring. Yeah, but right now it's like actual money. So, So, boy, you'd think you could need somebody who had a lot of practical business running and building experience. Not that you don't, but somebody who's used to doing it in a more crisis basis. Boy, if only you knew somebody like that. The other thing is that finally Janelle will appear for the meeting, like instead of waiting for it, because she wants to introduce Brian to you, who goes by Bry. Bry is a Northern California late teen who now at that point in Northern California you don't surf, but you do spend a lot of time at the ocean if you grow up on the coast, and you'll do other fairly dangerous water sports in the rocky shores. There are surfing areas, but they tend to be short runs, and people tend to get eaten by sharks. So, but this guy looks as though he's spent like all his life doing this instead of going to school. You wouldn't expect to see Bry in the halls of Advanced Futures under any circumstances. And Janelle is introducing him to you like very enthusiastically. I mean, this is your new like consulting business person and promotion expert. And she's introducing you to this, this rat person. And it might be a little mysterious at first why she's doing this. So, how do you greet Bry?
Really super professionally.
Mm-hmm. He addresses
like,
you as
like formally.
He addresses you as dude without realizing that he said it.
Okay.
He is not referencing a movie. He is not, being ironic. And he'll kind of look at you and say, "You don't remember me, do you?"
No, you have me at a disadvantage.
Well, he was the fellow that you fought at the concert.
Okay.
Who I will tell you now, as the GM, went by the name Mirror Mirror.
Okay.
Was the supervillain name. And he has come to offer. I mean, Janelle has hunted him down. And he has decided, because he decided that this whole supervillain thing was a really bad idea.
Okay. All right.
And that she said, we can do some promotion with Bry, who can present a case for Advance as having had a positive impact on his life. She kind of looks sternly. This professional black woman looks at Bry fairly sternly and says, "Because you were talking about getting that GE, right, Bry?" "Right," says Bry, remembering that he promised something about that.
Well, what does Vince know about Mirror Mirror? Are these innate powers? Are these
right? I think that in keeping with our themes, that it would make most sense if the distinction between innate and technical were kind of blurred.
Okay.
But gotcha. He's not a technical whiz who made a gadget.
Okay.
Yet, on the other hand, we are talking about some kind of energy, some manipulation. Maybe he needs mirrors in order to do his thing. So there is some kind of manipulation of, maybe, I think maybe I'm overly focused on hands when it comes to superpowers. But I kind of like the idea of you holding up your hand and it's a mirrored surface that's flawless, creating kind of a thing. That's one aspect of it. And so, and then of course, I hadn't really thought of the powers except that they're the fun kind of thing where you can't tell what's real and what's not because it's a mirror image. Oh! And yeah, basically you knew exactly what you were doing when you used your powers and effectively, defeated him without hurting him and gave him a little time to think. Maybe he'll even remind you that you had said something like, what do you think you're doing? Or were you really planning to accomplish anything? Or something like that.
Yeah, gotcha.
And that it made an impression on him. He was like, that dude's kind of got a point. So he seems quite sincere about that. That's not a question. He's perhaps not the most ambitious person in terms of what to do with his life otherwise, but Janelle points out that with a certain amount of preparation that a public statement and a conversation between the two of you might be very, very good. Especially, she sighs, especially because we are running, she says you're running into a need for public support. And I had mentioned that a particular woman, was it the California Senate or Congress, but a state rep of some kind, is not like federal Senate, but the state government, is making a case for Advanced Futures as having exceeded its brief. And remember, we talked about that. and has brought some political pressure to bear. All of a sudden, all your licenses are up for review. The classic first step. So anyway, yeah, you're there. Okay, does that help a little bit with kind of your?
Well, you know, the thought balloon. You know, no, I mean, look, this kid obviously could be a bit dangerous. He needs to be supervised. There's enough supervillains running around right now.
Yeah, you don't need another one. Yeah.
Yeah. So Vince gives him that stern look. So, do you have a job or anything right now? I mean, what are you doing with your life?
Oh well, just seeing what comes around.
All right. Well, then I'm gonna end.
Things will turn out for the better, right? We know that. He says. Well, yeah, cheerfully.
With a little work, they will. So Janelle's going to introduce you to my HR person, and we are going to put you to work at Advanced Futures, where you can
cool.
Start.
Right.
Start learning.
What does that do?
Well, you know what? If you work hard and you study, maybe you'll start to get the big picture of all this stuff. But for now, you're going to be in the janitorial services.
Oh no!
Okay. That's where we're going to start you out. You show us that you can come to work on time, and you can focus, and I'll start getting you some tutoring and stuff for your GE, and we'll start get you on a path to get you some education.
Right. Well, to close out on this, Janelle will say over her shoulder when Bri is not listening, and point out to you and say, "Yeah, and you and I can work a little bit on that imaging thing, janitor," and then heads on.
Right.
So, yeah. You're in the thick of it. Not exactly the stuff of
it's
superhero.
Not like a mailroom,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right.
Where did you start? In an advanced lab.
That's right. I know. No, it's exactly what happens. When the first thing undergraduates do in a laboratory is learn how to clean the place.
Right.
And it's not like you and Denise haven't pushed that broom when necessary, even up to the present day, right? So, what I want to go into now is the some of the of other context. There is you guys get ambushed. You and Denise get ambushed by a reporter from she introduces herself as from a Seattle newspaper. Which as a newspaper, its feature magazines and stuff are probably its more discernible physical products at this time. And they've shifted. So instead of just inserts, they're now magazines and glossy and are, you can get them on their own. And so one of them I think is probably called, something like, I don't want to give it too sinister a name, but it's probably I don't know. I'll have to think about it, but it'll have a elite name of some kind. Now and her name is Monica Stewart, and she really would like to work with you regarding Power Star. She says she's done a lot of work on Power Star's history, and considers him, that there are sinister or scary or risky aspects to his super career that all of the hype and all the sort of cultural mythology has overlooked or obscured. lots of things that everybody would say Power Star did, she can point out and say, no, that was that movie back in the 80s. And so she's been kind of putting together, the actual information. The way she makes it sound, because she'd like to show you some of it. And I mean, you and Denise are like standing in the street. And she's kind of hit this point after point after point, and is speaking to you very much with admiration, respect, appreciation. Fortunately you were there at the Space Needle. Fortunately you were there at the geysers. Your record speaks for itself, and I'm sure, you're too modest to say so, but certainly your presence there brought the kind of experience and responsibility and, I'll even say heroism, that was so, that the rest of us are also grateful for. But do you see how she's phrasing it? Good thing you were there, sort of thing. So she's pretty good at her job. I'm going to say she almost has you nodding there for a second. And so that's what's happening. She's kind of going after you at this level. And is, it's just so she definitely wants to. I mean, she'll like whip up her phone. There's footage on it, and sure enough, Power Star locked in combat with Dr. Darkstar. That was quite a lot of devastation over at that big ass dam. Alan.
Is this like Zapruder style footage and stuff?
It's more like news
8mm in the 50s.
Yeah, I was thinking more in terms of the capture is bad, but the source is actually from news reports.
Okay.
So it's not quite Zapruder. It's more in the sense of this is what the actual news crews were able to capture.
Okay, got it. Yeah, Vince kind of looks in there and goes, "Listen, Power Star is a hero, and a lot of people could be dead right now if it wasn't for Power Star, including myself. So that's all I'm going to comment on that. And can he make a presence attack?
You can, and I'll tell you what you're making the presence attack on. She instantly is responding with the, can you elaborate on exactly what he did during the confrontation
right.
with the basilisk to illustrate that remark? I'm sure you would be happy to describe exactly what you mean in exactly what he did that warrants that kind of praise. So she's pretty good, you know what I mean?
Yeah, she's good. She's good.
So that, but yes, make the presence attack. I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what you're up against. Actually, Monica's actually scaring me. I mean, I'm like, man.
Okay, I'm not pushing this, so it's just a...
Yeah, you can't push presence. It's not endurance-based.
Okay, so that's not bad. That's 11. That's 13. And you don't count body, do you?
Nope.
No.
Yeah.
So 13.
Well, as a hardened.
Oh yes, I have to get above her.
Yeah.
Presence.
Yeah. That's even just for one times. So the only way to get her to stop talking and asking these questions is to leave.
Okay, you can contact my PR department at Advanced Futures,
mm-hmm.
and if you're looking for an official statement, then we move on.
No comment.
Yeah. Vince Vasilovich.
She's worse than the basilisk.
Yeah, right. Vince Vasilovich deflected my questions with practiced ease and turns me over to his no doubt highly objective PR flack, is the way she puts it. But I will say that the images that you saw definitely showed devastation, and Power Star back in 1956 certainly seemed pretty okay with it, saying something like no price is too great for for the safety of us all and justice and liberty.
But also,
America knew what to do in war, and if people bring the war to our shores, they'll find it here waiting for them too. They'll find the same response here. So which plays very, very, very well in 1956 as rhetoric.
It's not the best legacy for now, for me.
So. Yeah, you're kind of, he said that? But I do want to emphasize that I'm not saying Power Star wasn't a hero in the context that made sense culturally. So, and objectively, well, that's going to be a good question, isn't it? You're going to have to say, where was he objectively? Insofar as one can take that line. So cool. You will note from the footage your practiced science eye. Make a perception roll. 3d6, 14 or less.
Yes. Yeah. 11.
Okay. No problem. You easily spot, even with your brief perusal, and especially that you had been present when Darius Darkstar had talked about his powers, that the devastation on the nearby region is definitely blowback from Power Star using their powers, and that Darkstar's powerful retaliation was very much directed at Power Star. So it's a little hard to say. I mean, when it comes to collateral damage in super fights, who did what is not always that obvious. But you're thinking about it. You're saying, yeah, he's sucking power from Power Star to do it, and he seems to be directing that back into Power Star in a devastating fashion, rather than like laying waste to the region. I'm not going to pitch Darius Darkstar as having been like the big hero in all of this. I'm not going to just pull that simple reversal. But I am going to point. But that difference in their powers bears some mention.
Because we don't know if Power Star realized that Darkstar was feeding on him or not.
Darkstar claims he didn't. Darkstar claimed that he never did. The way he put it was that due to a series of annoying and ridiculous coincidences, Power Star was stripped of his powers and then, was able to take down Dr. Darius Darkstar, much to the latter's extreme irritation. Because now he had no power source. So, yeah. I'm sure that would be a lot of fun story to write one of these days. But, okay, so that's one look. Simultaneously, there's a back at, let's see, how would this work? There's I'm trying to think of how this other NPC's activity would impact Mike without Mike being Power Star at the moment. So I'm going to...
Which NPC? Monica?
No, someone else that I have in mind.
Oh, okay.
The one that I'm referring to, generically at the moment.
Okay.
But let's talk about people that Mike would be directly interacting with. Aaron is thrilled. Aaron seems to have found a three-cornered opportunity in which he and some venture funding have found one another in order to combine advanced futures down there in California with Aaron's fiction and nonfiction, so that they'll actually do a Netflix show that's based on advanced future tech as science fiction, or sort of as Aaron will explain carefully, as, you know, non-fictional fiction.
I don't think I've quite completely understood that concept.
Well, he's pretty sure he's got it, because you see, it's a fictional story, but the actual subject matter is real and relevant, and the message can be heard. Because it's entertaining, but it's also, you know, about real stuff. And, you know, the way forward. And, you know, he's already got, you know, all this great stuff, that these books he's written and stuff, and the funding for it is there, if Advanced Futures is going to agree. Some woman from where was it? Kind of the Tahoe-ish region is, or at least that's where their business is registered. Probably a mailbox. Because, you know, one of those counties is going to have low business taxes or something like that, so they'll register their business at that post office box. And so, but this person, whose name is Elaine Liu, Liu, is very. It looks as though there could be a pretty good mix there. So all of a sudden, Advanced Futures, unbeknownst to Vince, who is busy, is getting hit with this opportunity, and Aaron is all about it. He's very excited, and having just seen Advance in action with Power Star up close and personal, like against the window of the Space Needle.
Yes,
he's
something.
Right. He is all ready to include, you know, the realities of that experience in with his work.
I see.
So
well, it sounds like a great project, Aaron.
Right. Well, you know, and this is going to be a more casual hangout than like the formal meeting where they felt they had to talk. This is going to be more like you and Aaron, you know, actually meeting, because, you know, more socially, less formally, or, you know, and yet on the other hand, it also is a little more businessy than the previous conversation. And, you know, Aaron will tell you, you know, look, it looks as though you got a lot to work through with this money, but I really realized that you know, I was really fixating on the money. I just couldn't get over it. I told you at the dinner I couldn't get over it, and, you know, maybe I can. Maybe I can. This is something that I just want to let you know, that when you feel like talking about some of those things you were a little bit evasive about, that, you know, I'm happy to hear it. But I'm not.
I appreciate that.
He uses some regional jargon. He says, I feel like I'm relating to you more as my brother again, and I'm not as invested in, you know, not as invested in the distraction. So yeah, he also says, but he also says, just a word to the wise, you know, I mean, I know you guys have your own history, but he says, Michelle is being a little cagey. She made an excuse not to be here today. She might have some kind of issue with you that you might want to talk to her about. Just
okay.
Just saying as the guy here. So yeah, and it is true. You know, you haven't heard from Michelle since Space Needle. You haven't Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Um, I just want to say, I'm glad you found something that is really worthy of your talents.
Well,
I
he
care
goes.
about
Ad,
I care about being a good brother, and
well,
so I don't want this to come between us.
Advanced Futures hasn't said yes yet.
Hmm.
And I'm sure they're getting hit with all kinds of offers of different sorts. But
Hmm.
it's. Uh, but maybe he'll listen.
What's your concern? Is it just that they seem to be overwhelmed and you can't get through to talk to the main guy, or
Well, that's not
what's
really
happening?
my department. I'm not really supposed to
Uh,
be the people have to set up meetings. They got to make phone calls. I don't know. I mean, they tell me it's coming along. I mean,
uh,
Elaine tells me that it's coming along, but all I'm saying is that I haven't received the paper with the signature yet. Um,
oh, well, I I'm sure something is going to turn up soon.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, you're sort of antenna at Aaron's, tendency to get real pumped about this new opportunity.
Hmm.
That you've heard that kind of I'm sure and it's going to be and here it goes and now's the time at last. You've heard that before.
Aha. But I'm also thinking on the side, my thought bubble is uh, maybe I can talk to Vince about paying more attention to
Of
this
course,
proposal.
because that wouldn't be boundary
Uh,
crossing at all.
no.
All right, so yeah, remarkable how the characters that we play in superhero games do all the things we would tell them not to do if we actually do them.
Hmm.
So good enough. We have those considerations are underway. The other thing I wanted to see about, and this one will entail dice and danger, I hope, is more about you guys had talked a little bit about the power cave, a little bit about um, the thinking about the continuum, and that getting Vince involved up there in Seattle,
Hmm.
is something that you're thinking about as well.
Hmm.
Now, and I'm saying that Vince kind of has his plate kind of full. Oh yeah. Let me think for a moment. Oh yeah. Everybody at the Space Needle, all the people who have said that they were there, have been contacted by a representative from a California state rep who is getting statements about exactly what happened at the Space Needle.
California.
Yeah. And about exactly what happened at the Space Needle, and they're particularly interested in whatever danger Advance may have put the people in the Space Needle into. It's kind of the way they're framing it.
That doesn't sound good.
Mm-hmm. But you were there, and so you're going to have to see if you can make a suitably convincing statement of where you were and what you saw, and especially one that doesn't contradict what every single other person in the Space Needle says. Which means you're going to have to guess what they would have said.
You're speaking to Vince, right?
No, I'm speaking to
Mike?
Mike, because Mike was allegedly in the Space Needle at the time of the event in the restaurant.
Uh-huh.
And so, therefore, his statement, that the rep would love a statement from you. You're not legally bound to give it or anything like that, but just talking with you about your experiences and being glad that you're safe and getting a good. They're really trying to nail down the circumstances. Now, the government of Seattle is thrilled with both Power Star and Advance. So you know
okay.
that you're locally and in the state of Washington, you are, you know, this is all very exciting. But for some reason, this particular the representative is Helen Jacobson. Was that Jacobs? Was that right, Frank? Yeah, Helen Jacobs, and this particular agent of her office is more than happy to, find out, wants to talk to everybody, comparing statements, getting an idea of what happened. The question is whether you're going to be able to make a proper story.
Well, behind the scenes, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that the chaos of what happens is going to cover my story, which was that I had gotten up to go to the restrooms when when the chaos started to happen, and that I got caught in a crowd who had gathered around the exit, I guess.
It would have been that central thing.
Yeah.
They'd blocked the elevators
Yeah.
and tried to manage people choking the elevators and stairs and stuff. So,
Yeah.
Okay. They ask a few too many pointed questions. Clearly, they've talked to other people, so they've got specific things that they're fact checking with you, like asking something that seems really obvious that it would have been the case.
I am dubious. The player is dubious about being able to pass this test, but
Well, you're just going to have to, I think. Is it going to be an intelligence roll? An intelligence check? Actually, you know what? It's going to be an ego check.
Ego. Okay.
Because it's more about keeping your cool.
Yes.
Even if, right.
Yes, it would be.
Even if they say, but that's not what so-and-so said. You'd say, oh, God, yeah, there were like 20 people milling around. Actually, so-and-so said these other people we talked to, everybody else corroborates that there were only about 7 or 8. Stuff like that. Do you keep your cool and say, hey, I wasn't counting? Or do you just start stuttering and like making some elaborate lie? So
yeah, I can't tell you whether the redheaded woman was there.
Right.
I was too busy trying to see over the crowd to see what was happening outside the windows or something like that.
Right.
Anyway, so it's just an 11 or less. So let's see what happens. I got an 11 exactly.
Yes. Well, you swallow hard when they leave, having just barely bitten your tongue several times to keep from being trapped in some statement.
I almost wish I'd failed. It would have been interesting.
Yeah, I know. I was hoping to, but the fun part is there's several contexts. One is that just to give you a little GM technique. Do you see how I'm having the Hunteds go through the other character? Yes. Right. So the Hunteds are basically flanking both of you, instead of being easy to fight, and that's kind of all I've got in terms of my proactive NPCs. I'm interested in what you guys want to do with the Power Cave, when and if Vince is going to come up to Seattle, and
I'm still interested in learning a bit more about Miss Van Hoyt.
Okay. Oh, that's right. You were down there at the campus. All right.
Yeah.
Huh. We may not be able to do Power Cave and Darius stuff tonight then, but that's all right.
But that's important too.
Right. Well, that's okay. At the moment, let's go ahead and, because you're focused on this issue. What were you? I'm afraid I don't have like a massive amount more information unless you want to specifically tell me what you're inquiring about.
So okay, let me just share what I might see on a comic book page.
Yeah.
Is that Mike hanging out or just going to one of these open events?
Oh, that's right.
He's 30, so he's not outside the range of being a potential student, so he's probably not going to stand out, except for the fact that
culturally you don't fit, but age-wise you're in the range. Believe me, there are plenty of 30-year-old graduate students.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm thinking that...
and this is San Francisco State, so a lot of students are returning students. There's a very broad age range. Matter of fact, you may not stand out that badly because a lot of them are working people who have decided to go to college after all, after a time in the workforce. So, okay, I'm remembering my campuses.
Yeah.
So,
so my thought is just to attend one of these events and drop the name of, did you see what happened? Or I saw what happened with Basilisk. That was horrible. And see if I can get somebody talking.
Well, that's not a problem. They're bringing it up already.
Yeah.
I mean, remember her signs are up.
The next step would be to ask, did you actually talk to her? Did you know her?
The person you ask that to says no, but there's her roommate. This is in her apartment. There's her roommate. She's going to talk right now.
Oh, she's going to talk. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, let's hear. I'll listen to what she has to say.
Right. They don't call her Shelley. Everyone, you've picked up that no one ever called her anything but Shelley. But this particular group and the internet habit now of referring to is now by her full name, which is Rochelle. So Rochelle Van Hoyt is now nobody's ever going to refer to her as anything else when they are doing the whole remember her thing. The roommate will get up there and will swallow kind of hard, looking around. She's got, a head of curly hair. She's wearing kind of a nice scarf. It's not, as you know, San Francisco is colder than anybody outside of California thinks. Mm-hmm. So she's wearing a colorful scarf, a little thick kind of colorful scarf. And she looks a little not quite as groomed or not quite as, not quite as free intellectual liberty uptight as a lot of the people around you. If that makes any sense. And she swallows hard, looks at the crowd and says, "Thank you for having me speak today. I want to speak about Shelley, the person. And I was her roommate for 2 years. And the crowd, there's a sort of a ripple in the crowd that she used the wrong name. And as she begins to talk about how she and Shelley would debate political issues and how, Shelley had a more nuanced view of things, than she may have presented on her show. And she said, "I just want to warn all the people here who are, in their good intentions, maybe forgetting that there's a lot of thought here and a lot of questions, not just the answers that, that are being shouted." And by this point, she's being openly booed.
Oh. This is disappointing. Mm-hmm. So I imagine that she's going to wrap up soon.
Yeah, she's not able to finish.
Yeah.
Get off the stage. Libtards out.
I would like to approach her and say, "I'm sorry you've been treated like that. I can hear that she was an important person to you."
Okay, it might be a little tough to get in, to get in a conversation, but I would say sooner or later, that you'll be able to get a chance to talk to her away from the event.
Uh-huh.
And there's some of the students back there at the event are shouting at the booers.
Mm-hmm.
This is supposed to be about free speech. You can't boo someone off the stage. And so you can see that students who outwardly identified with one another actually do have some pretty profound disagreements. That's going on back at the event. The event doesn't look like it's going well. Kind of got off on the wrong foot. The organizers are not agreeing. But anyway, but you wanted to talk to her.
Yeah, Mike's thought is to get to know the person, and or at least to get an idea of, what attracted her to the basilisk, and that kind of thing. So, if he can make some kind of contact with this person who, spent so much
this
time
is actually worth tracking down. To do this, we have to think in terms of the relevant roles. Unlike Sorcerer, Champions doesn't have kind of an empathy, human connect mechanic available to it. So you may have to. What are your character's psychological limitations?
Everybody deserves a second chance.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the other one? Oh, just feelings for Michelle.
Oh, right. Well, it seems to me as though that first one is actually working very strongly in your favor.
Yes, that's part of my motivation here.
So I think that since you're operating off the psych limitation, we can go ahead and roll down. It's like the disadvantage provides you with a road you can roll down.
Okay.
So that's sort of going to be my mechanics window to saying yes, you are there. You are able to express that fairly because it's near and dear to you. You are able to. Nobody would mistake you for being insincere. Because it's a psychological limitation. And you can also, earn her trust, if you will, through that. So the roommate, whose name is Anna, was also in the conservative circles of students, but she wasn't an activist. And she, very much is in the, not that she'll explain this to you, and maybe she will explain it to you in more detail, but she read a whole lot of William Safire, of, what's his name? Why am I not remembering it? Of course, what am I thinking? William F. Buckley Jr.
Oh, of course.
A name, a name I know well, and so it's so yes, William Safire, William F. Buckley Jr., some other more recent versions along those lines. Why am I having so much trouble tonight in remembering names that I know very, very well? But anyway, she reels off kind of what you might think of. The term in modern parlance is paleoconservative.
Paleoconservative.
Right. And so, and they distinguish themselves sharply from neoconservative.
Yeah.
So, right.
I've actually seen clips of William Buckley talking.
Right.
So
she's, she says that's kind of where she was coming from. And then, she and Shelley, as they got more involved in their studies and more involved in campus activities and things like that, Shelley became much more oriented toward the social scene of activism, dated a guy or two, became respected for a speaker, of her own, quickly outshone, the kind of the local heroes of the movement on campus. And so what she's really herself trying to figure out the whole basilisk angle on things, and only through your questioning and awareness of what was going on can she, or you, through her account, you're able to find that she started spending time actually making the equipment after she started having conversations. So like it's like her conversation, she started sounding like she was quoting someone else. She started sounding like she was the step being that it was time for action. She started sounding more militant, but she wasn't being Shelley. She wasn't interested in things like immigrant bashing, like physically. She was much more infrastructurally oriented. She was much more institutionally oriented. There were institutions that needed taking down. And so
I mean, can you give me the thing is what Mike's going to say is I saw her plea on or her transmissions, and it seemed to be very intense, and I personally don't completely agree with what the thrust of those things were, but I felt it was important because there's this tragedy of her death. I felt it was important to find out.
Well, she says, you're the only person. You're the only person who said that to me, because I feel the same way. She says, I have to admit it. She was a glory hound. She always was. She liked the attention. She liked the accolade. She liked the mass response. When she started blogging, she was like another person. She was, she'd get high off of a great, video session, just out of adrenaline high from that. She would, it was kind of hard to take.
So,
and
I think she kind of adopted a stance because it was getting an attention that she liked, as opposed to. I
wouldn't go that far. She wasn't stupid, but I could see how that's when I think, whatever she's still under the impression that Shelley had become the basilisk like somebody puts on a costume. So she's saying that's when she decided to do it. She doesn't quite understand nobody does. Nobody really understands that this is an entity of some kind. Or at least she's not talking in that way. And that's sort of hampering your conversation because you're looking for data that's consistent with that. And she's talking, she says, this is where it makes sense to you. She's saying, I just don't see when she would have taken it actually to the violence. And she says, and she was a poli-sci kid, like me. What do we know, about superpowers? I lived with her for years. It's not like it's not like she was walking around. It's not like Netflix where, their hands glowed or something and we all pretended nothing happened. Nothing like that. So what you're learning is that somebody somehow got that information to her.
Do you know where did Rochelle come from? I mean, was she a local? Did she live locally? Did she have family?
What the hell? Let's make it easy. She's from the mountainside of Berkeley, not downtown Berkeley, but the mountainside of Berkeley. A lot of nice homes scattered up on that mountainside. So that's where. Really resented the whole Berkeley stereotype that she would be a Birkenstock patchouli girl, and definitely, a big part of her background was not being that person.
So she might have grown up, or what you're saying, Ron, is that she might have grown up in a liberal background, but be reacting against it? Not
so much, no. A lot of the people in the affluent side of Berkeley are very much... I'm saying that she didn't come from that background. She came from she just dislikes the people assuming it as soon as she said the word Berkeley. And so she comes from when she showed up on campus, she was reflecting her family values and her cultural stance. So she wasn't a rebel in that sense. Unlike, let's just say Anna is, maybe, as a contrast, so she's able to describe this. So that's kind of where I'm at. And Vince, Frank, I feel like we're leaving you out a little bit. You okay?
Yeah. No, this is very interesting.
Okay.
I'm thinking that so as we know, Mike doesn't have any particular skill in terms of disguise or detective work. So I don't think I can really take this much farther.
Yeah, I was thinking myself, you've probably hit the limits of just plain interaction.
Yeah.
And notice I've been focusing very much on feelings.
Yeah.
That's why. Very
And
little in
in
terms
fact,
of... Right.
That's actually what Mike is interested in, is what motivation is.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just felt like there was this big commitment she made. As you pointed out at one point, she made an actual decision to go the full way and commit to the powers that would end up killing her.
In her case, it may have had a lot to do with, now that Anna knows that she was the basilisk, she says it probably had a lot to do with that Komodo dragon guy.
How do you mean?
Well, the basilisk was, and the Komodo dragon, conducted like a 6 months of vlogging war. I think if I know Shelley, she would have kind of got addicted to it, and she would have had to win. And she says, and face it, that guy's such a loser. I mean, kind of bites her tongue, doesn't want to say anything. But let's just say, if you want to say something derogatory about Komodo dragon's lifestyle, there are plenty of people who would be happy to fill in the blanks.
Okay. Well, thank you for your conversation, and my condolences.
Well, she says thanks. She says, I really appreciate somebody taking the time. Nice to meet a gentleman. So yes, I don't know if there's much else you can get from Anna. Tell you the truth.
I'm going to wrap that up.
Okay.
And I think the next thing to do would be to contact Vince and have a conversation about if he would like to come up and have a look at the power cave.
Are you going to head back to Seattle first before commenting? Because you're down in you're still in San Francisco, basically. Yeah.
I can't remember exactly. There's a teleport disc in Humboldt. I know that.
Yeah, let's just say that the council person has definitely shifted it somewhere else.
So I think the thing to do would be to drive up with a rental car, a point-to-point rental.
You guys run a whole lot of cars.
Well, actually, I have something to kind of add on that. I did save 20 points of Advance's character for dusty old, 80s gadgets / vehicles.
Right.
So maybe he could, dust off the Advance plane or something like that, and we could be a little bit more mobile.
That's interesting too. Yeah. So you two share this. You have more base points, basically, of regional flight. That's kind of cool. That's actually not that expensive either. Cool. So Zoom, yeah, you could go ahead and fly an Advance plane up.
Okay, well, my idea is to arrive where Vince, since San Francisco is south of the, so I'll just head up there.
Right.
Let's see. So at some point, I'm going to have to find an isolated place to change into Power Star and go visit the Advanced. What's the name of the agency? The company?
Advanced Futures.
Advanced Futures. Yes. Walk into Advanced Futures office.
Ooh. Well, Power Star is draws a crowd.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so within not too long, there's going to be people, gawking and loitering and convening in the region. But meanwhile, there you are, and you arrive, and to discover that Advanced Futures is a small place in terms of staff, but they are very busy. And you'll recognize, the basic look of the interior, because you've been here before, however briefly. And sure. So Vince, what do you do? Power Star has arrived.
All right.
Which,
Well,
being Power Star, means a whole lot of zip, zap, spark, and here I amness.
all right. Well, and he kind of ushers him back into more private office, after I'm sure Power Star's waving to all his employees. And
Right.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because he's a big celebrity, and so now we're in a private area. Well, I'm glad you came to visit us. What's how can I help?
So we're private, right?
Yes, except that Denise comes in and she's got some kind of funky scanner and she says, I want to take some measurements off this guy.
My lovely wife,
Okay.
Denise.
Denise takes one look at you and is very pleasant, but seems determined.
Okay. Well, I guess I did want to have a moment to. Yeah. So Mike is feeling a little awkward, but I guess he can still talk about what was on his mind, which was
Power Star. As you can see, I no longer have any secrets from Denise here, so she is safe to safe to hear any developments, and in fact, she might even have a good perspective on something. Because I'm sure there's still that little, hey, I hid my secret identity from her for so long, and everything. So
right. She gives you one look, which says volumes, and looks at Power Star and says, "You should tell her." And then she, thinks for a second. New life, new world, new tone, or him, or whatever, I guess. But you should say.
What? So let me under. You're telling me that I should tell my significant other who I am.
Denise says, "Yes, I am."
Vince just kind of shrugs, like
exactly.
She's always right.
I've got a thought balloon. I wish I had a significant. Let's see. Well, okay. So, make your measurements. Go ahead.
Right.
Is that going to interrupt with me?
No. Actually, I quite like the idea. It's almost like a tailor. Okay, raise your arms, sort of thing, and she's taking readings off of a thing that goes beep, and it's she's going. Huh. Mutters a couple of things under her breath as she goes and says, "Love to meet the guy who invented this."
You would.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that might be possible.
Well, she says, is there some sort of time dilation effect there? Because I'm not getting any readings that would indicate that. So if you invented this, you would have been a very, very, very able little sperm.
Well, I have to say that I can't take credit. So, but I may be able to put you in touch with somebody who knows a lot about it.
Ooh, she says, you ought to be careful messing around with that if you don't quite know what's going on.
Yeah, reform.
Part of what I'm talking to your husband about, but I guess you've got some expertise in this as well.
She shrugs.
I think Vince gets a little possessive. Reformed or not, Denise is going nowhere near Darkstar.
Oh, I see. Yes, and also that reformed business is a very, very big jump on anybody's part. That's all I have to say.
Right.
But shall we say, well behaved?
Okay. Yes.
So yeah, I kind of like that. I mean, you're saying, well, yeah, maybe you could meet the guy, and back there we see Vince going, oh no 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 no
No.
Excellent. Okay, well, anyway, enough with the Denise enjoyment, a character whom I do love to play. So she tempts me. So I'll stop.
Okay.
Go ahead and have your... Yeah, we'll just imagine that kind of thing going on. And what are you guys talking about?
So I just wanted to share with Vince that what I learned about Rochelle Van Hoyt, and express. I was, because she had made this decision apparently to die with the powers that she opposed us with. I wanted to find out what was so intense that she would make that commitment, and I've did some mild investigation of who she was, and I'm just going to tell you what I found out.
Right.
She was a student. She seems to have gotten essentially carried away. She was in a conservative movement on a student campus, but she seems to have also really valued attention. So that seems to have taken her over the top. But her roommate doesn't really understand the transition. And I haven't engaged any investigators that would be able to get any deeper into it. But my suspicion is that there was some mismatch of personality, that something influenced her beyond what she would normally do.
Make an intelligence roll, Mr. Science Guy.
That is...
Boxcars. Oh no. All right. Well, you're somewhat baffled by the source of the energy, even though it could be kind of obvious to anybody who's been following the captions. But yes, the insight into the actual origin of the basilisk power, and presumed some element of intentionality there, is going to have to wait for another time.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, there's your.
So we
all that work, and then you muff your roll, then you get the triple boxcars. What am I going to do? Yeah.
Well, maybe how we can end this little interaction with just talking about the tragedy of a young woman who's died for something like that, and Mike has an intention to.
Do you remember what Darius told you in the first session?
Oh boy, no, I don't.
You're going to have to decide who you are.
Something that I experienced back in the old days was that there's always threats, and part of this game is figuring out and prioritizing the threats. With the Dark Cohort and the continuum going on here, we kind of know that Basilisk is going to take some time to recoup after his plans have been foiled. So,
And metagame-wise, that's Komodo Dragon's problem anyway. But never mind that part. It's a good point. The Dark Cohort was thwarted from the Space Needle energy, and there seems to be this Project Beyond group, which is, taking federal authority over that same thing, for better or for worse. And then there's also this continuum thing going on. Yeah, I mean, I actually think that I would take the next unit of play very much into the duel now fought by Darius Darkstar against the Continuum. And the question is, are the two of you just vectors or points in the vector of that duel? I mean, will you be trapped in that battle or be able to be agents of your own in it or not? So that's kind of where I would go.
Do we know about the continuum? I can't remember.
Yes, the name, the Dark Star had and Edison had theorized its existence along with other similar entities, and when he talked to Vince, was able to speculate that their theory had been correct and that this one particular entity did indeed exist. In which case he needs to put into action his long-standing notions of how such an entity might be combated. Now, whether you would be collateral damage in those notions is an interesting issue. So I guess that's pretty much what I've got. Unless you guys want to do the Power Cave, but it's getting a little late.
Do you want to call it here for today?
I think I probably could. I mean, nice, quiet session. Also, you know what?
Another master class.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'd love to. I appreciate that. I will say, let's not forget, we've had 3 pretty knockout sessions. That's 12 in terms of combat and stuff. That's 12 experience points. That's 2 for this one. So that's 14 experience points, which in Champions is
quite a bit.
That's a windfall. You know, you're like, whoa, I should be doing something with these. So maybe this is a good time to kind of look over the sheets, look over the rules, and say, you know, what are some things I can do with this for fun? And and I think you'll find some pretty cool stuff.